The lobby was still buzzing from the agent's salute when the manager's face flushed a deep shade of red. He tried to recover his composure, smoothing down his tie. "Well, I was just doing my job, following protocol." Althea stood, gathering her documents. "Your protocol seems selective," she said evenly, her voice just loud enough for those nearby to hear. The taller agent's jaw tightened. "Selective. That's one word for it." The younger teller, the one who had first helped Althea, finally spoke up. "Sir, I told you the documents checked out, but you said—" Her voice trailed off when the manager shot her a warning glare. The shorter agent turned to the manager. "Sir, for the record, initiating a federal law enforcement response without sufficient probable cause is not only wasteful, it can be considered harassment, especially when it targets someone who's clearly presented legal identification and documentation." The manager shifted uncomfortably. "There have been scams involving nonprofits. You can't be too careful." Althea's eyes narrowed. "So you assume that because the person making the transfer was a black woman with a large sum of money, she was the scam?" The silence was sharp. Several customers exchanged uneasy glances. One older man near the door muttered, "Shameful." The agents remained on either side of Althea as she stepped back toward the counter. The teller quickly processed the transfer, her hands moving faster than they had all morning. When she handed Althea the receipt, she said quietly, "I'm sorry for how this happened." Althea gave her a small nod. "Thank you." The agents walked her toward the door, but before leaving, the shorter one paused, turning back toward the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, you're looking at a woman who's given more for this country than most of us will ever be asked to. Remember that the next time you make snap judgments." Phones went up again, catching his words. The clip was already being stitched into the earlier salute footage. Outside, the summer air was heavy with humidity. The agents walked her to her car, keeping their voices low. "We're sorry you had to go through that," the taller one said. "But you should know this is going to get attention. The video's already online." Althea exhaled slowly. "I figured as much." The shorter agent gave a faint smile. "The truth has a way of spreading, too. People are going to see the salute before they see the accusation." She thanked them and got into her car, but before starting the engine, she checked her phone. Hundreds of notifications were already coming in. Tags from strangers, messages from fellow veterans, even a few reporters asking for comment. The top trending clip on social media showed the exact moment the agents saluted her, overlaid with the caption, "Bank tries to have her arrested. FBI salutes instead." By the time she got home that afternoon, the story had taken on a life of its own. Neighbors stopped her on the sidewalk, asking if it was really her in the video. Former Air Force colleagues called to tell her she'd just become an unofficial symbol of dignity under fire. But the attention wasn't all positive. Her work email was flooded with hate mail accusing her of playing the race card, along with threats from anonymous accounts. She'd been in the public eye before, military, commendations, veterans panels. But this was different. This was viral outrage, and the internet didn't care about context. That evening, she received a call from Howard, the Veterans Legacy Project treasurer. "Althea, I've spoken to the board. We want to make a statement, not just about what happened to you, but about what this says about how veterans, especially women of color, are treated when they're out of uniform." Althea hesitated. Speaking out meant magnifying the story, but staying silent meant letting the narrative be shaped by others, especially the ones who saw her as a threat, not a hero. "I'll think about it," she said. "But if we do this, it's going to be on my terms." Meanwhile, inside the bank, the fallout had already begun. The younger teller quietly told other staff what really happened, that the manager ignored verification, skipped standard procedures, and called in a federal escalation without evidence. Customers who'd witnessed the salute were posting their own versions of events. Some demanded the bank issue a public apology. Others hinted they'd be closing their accounts. By nightfall, the branch's Google reviews were flooded with one-star ratings, most citing racial bias and humiliating a veteran. And the manager? He wasn't giving interviews, but insiders knew he'd been called into an emergency meeting with regional leadership. By Saturday morning, the clip had crossed 3 million views on TikTok and was spreading across Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. News headlines started appearing. FBI salutes black woman in bank after manager calls for arrest. From suspect to hero, viral video sparks debate on racial profiling. Cable networks ran the footage on a loop, cutting between the salute and still frames of the stunned bank manager. Commentators began weighing in, some praising Althea's composure, others calling for the manager's termination. But what surprised Althea most was the flood of support from other veterans. Her inbox overflowed with messages. "Ma'am, I served in the 82nd Airborne. What you went through was wrong. We stand with you. As a Navy vet and a black woman, I've been in similar situations. Thank you for not letting them break you." There were hundreds more, stories of quiet discrimination, moments where service records meant nothing in the face of assumptions. Late that afternoon, a producer from a major morning news show called. "We'd like to have you on Monday to tell your side," she said. Althea paused. "You want the headline or the truth?" "The truth," the producer replied. "And the salute. America needs to see that moment in context." She agreed, on one condition. Howard, from the Veterans Legacy Project, would be there with her to speak about the nonprofit and the funding that started it all. Meanwhile, inside the bank's regional office, the situation was spiraling. Manager had been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. Corporate PR was drafting a carefully worded statement about unfortunate misunderstandings and commitment to diversity. But on social media, damage control wasn't working. A customer who'd been in the lobby that day posted a detailed account. The teller confirmed her paperwork. The manager ignored it. He called the FBI without even asking for additional proof. Then they came in and saluted her. "I've never seen someone's arrogance crumble so fast." That post alone got over 50,000 shares in 24 hours. Sunday evening, Althea met with Howard in his office to prepare for the interview. Howard, a former Marine with a booming voice and a quick laugh, had known her for years. He was furious, not just about the personal attack, but about what it implied for every veteran of color who walked into a bank, a store, or an office. "Althea," he said, leaning forward, "this isn't just about you. This is about what people think they see when they see us, about who they think we are before they know our names, before they know our service." She nodded slowly. "Then we make it about more than one bank branch. We make it about the pattern." Howard smiled. "Now you're talking." By the time Monday's interview aired, the country was already leaning in. The hosts replayed the salute, then let Althea tell her story without interruption. She explained the nonprofit, the urgent funding, the lack of proper verification, and the decision to escalate without cause. Howard followed with statistics, how veterans of color were more likely to face financial scrutiny, loan denials, and criminal suspicion, even when their paperwork was in order. It wasn't an angry interview. It was controlled, factual, but laced with the kind of moral authority that made viewers stop scrolling and listen. When it ended, the hosts shook their heads. "Thank you for your service, both in uniform and now." That night, donations to the Veterans Legacy Project tripled. Messages poured in from other nonprofits asking for partnerships, but the attention had another effect. More veterans, especially women and people of color, began sharing their own stories of being profiled in public spaces. A hashtag began trending. "Salute her too." Althea hadn't planned on starting a movement, but it was already happening. The knock on her window was sharp. Not a polite tap, the kind you might give a lost driver, but a rapid, staccato rapping meant to jolt. Mariah rolled the window halfway, keeping her voice calm. "Good evening, officer. Is there a problem?" The beam of a flashlight swept across her face, then down to her lap, then back again. "This vehicle was reported stolen," he said flatly. Her brows knit together. "Stolen? That's impossible. This is my car." The officer, his nameplate reading Daniels, didn't flinch. "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am." She could feel it already. That subtle weight in the air when someone has decided you're guilty before you've said a word. She'd seen it in court 100 times. A young man in handcuffs, a woman accused of shoplifting. The way the officer's body stiffened, their tone clipped, eyes narrowed as if the truth would be written in the suspect's posture, not in the facts. She glanced in her mirror. Another patrol car had just pulled in behind the first, its headlights flooding the scene. A second officer, younger and slighter, emerged and stood back, arms crossed, watching. Mariah inhaled slowly. "Officer, if you run my plates, you'll see—" "Step out!" Her training as a judge told her not to escalate, but her humanity bristled at the absurdity of being accused on a public street like this. She reached for her purse, careful and deliberate, and Daniel's hand snapped to his holster. "Hands where I can see them," he barked. She froze. "I'm just getting my identification." His jaw tightened. "I'll see it once you're out of the car." The audience knows she has the badge. The question now is how long she'll let him dig his own hole before she drops it. Mariah opened the door, the night air rushing in. Her heels clicked against the pavement as she stood beside the car. The gown's hem brushed the asphalt, a stark contrast to the bright white stripe of the lane marker under her feet. Daniel circled the Lexus like a shark, sizing up prey. "Whose car is this?" "I told you it's mine. Registered to Mariah Collins." His brows rose slightly. "Collins? Like the judge?" She met his gaze evenly. "Exactly like the judge." He smirked, a flicker of condescension crossing his face. "I'll need proof." From the second car, the younger officer shifted, clearly uneasy. "Sarge, I can run the plates right now. Stay put!" Daniels snapped without looking back. Mariah felt the heat rising in her chest. She had sat through police training seminars. She'd read reports on racial bias in traffic stops. She'd listened to officers insist they treated everyone the same. Yet here she was, standing on the side of the road in an evening gown, accused of grand theft auto because she happened to be a black woman behind the wheel of a Lexus. Daniels finally pulled out a small notepad. "Name?" She gave it, each syllable measured. "Address?" She recited it. As he scribbled, she thought about the irony, a man with no idea who she was, writing down the personal information of the very person who'd once ruled on a case involving his precinct. The audience begins to anticipate the reversal, the moment he realizes exactly whose career he's jeopardizing. The second officer, unable to hide his discomfort, finally spoke up. "Ma'am, can I ask, are you Judge Collins?" Daniels stopped writing. His eyes flicked to her face, searching for the truth he hadn't been willing to consider. Mariah reached into her clutch and, with the slow precision of a seasoned attorney revealing Exhibit A, pulled out the gold-embossed judicial ID. The lamplight caught the seal of the state of Georgia, the photograph unmistakable. For a beat, the only sound was the faint hum of a cicada somewhere in the distance. Daniel's smirk vanished. His voice faltered. You're... Yes, she said, cutting him off. The judge, the one who presides over cases of unlawful search and seizure. The one who has heard more racial profiling testimony than you've probably read in your academy manual." His Adam's apple bobbed. This is a misunderstanding." Her tone sharpened. "A misunderstanding is when you forget a birthday. This was an assumption, a dangerous one, and you made it in uniform, on duty, in front of a witness. The younger officer looked down at his boots, as if wishing the asphalt would swallow him whole. Daniels stammered, "Judge Collins, You will address me as Your Honor," she said, her voice now carrying the full weight of the courtroom. The confrontation has shifted, but the audience knows the fallout hasn't even started yet. For a long moment, no one moved. The ID card sat in her hand like a spotlight aimed directly at Officer Daniels' career. The younger officer shifted his weight. "Sarge, maybe we should—" "Quiet," Daniels snapped. But his voice had lost its edge. Mariah could feel eyes on her. Two people had stepped out onto their porch across the street, phones in hand, their screens glowing like little beacons. In Atlanta, you didn't ignore flashing blue lights on a quiet street. You recorded them. The moment a camera appears, the truth has a way of speeding up. "Your Honor, I didn't realize—" "That much is clear," Mariah said, her voice level but razor-sharp. "What you did realize was that you saw a black woman in a nice car, late at night, in an evening gown, and you assumed criminality before you. Even ran the plates. Am I wrong?" Daniels opened his mouth, then closed it again. And here it is. The silence that says more than an admission ever could. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. She ignored it. "Run my plates now," she said. Daniels hesitated, then pulled his radio from his shoulder. "Dispatch, this is Unit 2 to 7, run a plate check on—" He rattled off her tag number, voice low. The reply came in under 30 seconds. "Vehicle registered to Mariah Collins. Valid. No warrants." The younger officer glanced at her, then away. Daniels cleared his throat. "Must have been a clerical error in the system." Mariah's eyes didn't leave his. "A clerical error doesn't make you approach a driver with your hand on your weapon. It doesn't make you bark orders before verifying information. That's training. That's judgment." A man in gym shorts jogged past, slowed, and then stopped entirely when he saw the scene. He lifted his phone. More cameras. And with every new lens, the chance of rewriting the narrative disappears. "Your Honor," Daniels began again, "if we could just keep this between us?" She let out a quiet laugh. Not one of humor, but disbelief. "Between us? Officer, you detained a sitting judge without probable cause. You escalated a stop with your weapon in hand. You did so in front of your partner, and now, half the block." The air was thick with the hum of the street lamp and the faint static from both officers' radios. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, moving toward them. "Command's on the way," the younger officer muttered. Daniel's eyes flickered with something between fear and desperation. "We can sort this out." "No," Mariah said, stepping forward just enough that her heels clicked against the pavement with authority. "We will document this, in writing, and on record." The approaching siren grew louder until another patrol car slid into view. Out stepped a lieutenant, older, seasoned, clearly sensing the tension in the air before his boots even hit the asphalt. "What's going on here?" the lieutenant asked, scanning between Daniels, the younger officer, and Mariah. Daniels's lips parted, but Mariah spoke first. "What's going on is that I was stopped for driving my own car, accused of theft without cause, and ordered out at gunpoint. Your officer didn't run my plates until after detaining me. He ignored his partner's suggestion to verify first, and I believe," she said, locking eyes with Daniels, "that the only reason I was stopped at all is the color of my skin." The lieutenant's jaw tightened. "Your Honor, Judge Collins?" "Yes," she said, "and I expect this interaction to be reported to Internal Affairs before the night is over." And just like that, the stop isn't about suspicion anymore. It's about survival. His. Daniel's shoulders slumped. The lieutenant glanced at the onlooker's recording. "Ma'am, may I suggest we discuss this at the precinct?" "You may suggest it," Mariah said. "But I'm not going anywhere except home. I will, however, be filing a formal complaint in the morning, and I'll be noting the presence of at least 4 civilian witnesses." and their video footage. From across the street, one of the bystanders called out, "We got you, Judge! Whole thing's on video!" The lieutenant exhaled through his nose. "Understood." Daniels muttered something under his breath, but the lieutenant silenced him with a sharp look. "You're done for the night. Go back to your unit." Daniels hesitated, then turned, his boots heavy on the asphalt. "Some careers end in a courtroom, others end on the side of the road." Mariah stepped back to her car, opening the door with a measured calm. She took one last look at Daniels, now standing rigid beside his patrol car, and said, You wear that badge. You represent the law. Tonight, you represented bias. And that will be remembered." She closed her door, the solid thunk echoing in the quiet street. The engine purred to life. As she pulled away, the cameras followed her, not as a suspect, but as a judge who'd just turned a traffic stop into a reckoning. The next morning, Atlanta woke to the kind of news that spreads faster than coffee brews. Clips of the traffic stop were already circulating online, shaky phone footage showing Officer Daniels barking orders at a woman in an evening gown, followed by the moment she calmly revealed her judicial ID. The captions wrote themselves, "Cop accuses black judge of stolen car, regrets it instantly. When you mess with the wrong woman." By noon, the videos had been viewed hundreds of thousands of times. Comments flooded in, some outraged, others relieved to see a public example of what many had been saying for years. At 9:15 a.m., Mariah walked into the Fulton County Courthouse as she always did, robe folded over her arm, briefcase in hand. Except now, heads turned a little quicker, whispers carried a little longer. Her clerk, Ashley, leaned in as she passed. "The chief judge wants to see you in chambers." The meeting was short. The chief judge, a man with 30 years on the bench, listened as Mariah laid out every detail of the stop. She slid her phone across the desk, showing him the video a bystander had sent her directly. "This," he said, pointing at the screen, "is going to explode. Are you ready for that?" Mariah didn't hesitate. "Yes. If this helps even one person understand the reality of racial profiling, it's worth it." And in that moment, she knew the courtroom wasn't her only platform. By the afternoon, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution had picked up the story. News anchors played the footage in slow motion, breaking down every movement. Daniel's hand on his gun, his refusal to run the plates, the moment the gold badge flashed in the lamplight. Internal. Affairs opened an investigation the same day. Daniels was placed on administrative leave pending review. The younger officer submitted a written statement corroborating Mariah's account. For Daniels, the blow came swiftly. Within 2 weeks, IA concluded that the stop had violated departmental policy on multiple counts: failure to verify vehicle, status before escalation, conduct unbecoming of an officer, and potential bias-based profiling. The official report didn't use the word racism, but the public conversation did. Loudly, community leaders called for mandatory anti-bias training. Local activists used the footage at rallies, holding up signs that read, "If they'll do it to a judge, they'll do it to you." Talk radio lit up with debate. Some callers argued Daniels was just doing his job. Others countered that his job should include basic verification before concluding, or weapons. The danger wasn't in the mistake. It was in the certainty that the mistake couldn't be his. Mariah, for her part, didn't gloat. She didn't post celebratory tweets or grant exclusive interviews. She let the process play out, on paper, in policy meetings, and in quiet conversations with those who wanted to understand more than they wanted to defend. When Daniels' resignation was announced 3 months later, the press release was brief. Effective immediately, Officer James Daniels is no longer employed by the Atlanta Police Department. No mention of the stop. No mention of the video. But everyone knew. The younger officer stayed on the force, later transferring to community policing, and according to those who knew him, speaking more openly about the importance of verifying facts before acting on assumptions. For Mariah, the impact rippled far beyond one man's career. In the months after, she received letters, some typed, some handwritten, from strangers across the country. A college student in Chicago, a grandmother in Alabama, a public defender in California, all with the same message. I saw myself in that video. And in her courtroom, something subtle shifted. Officers who testified before her seemed to choose their words with more care. Defendants looked at her not just as a judge, but as someone who understood firsthand what it meant to be judged before you could speak. Justice, she knew, wasn't just a verdict. Sometimes, it was the story you left behind. Some nights, long after court had adjourned and the courthouse hallways had emptied, Mariah would sit in her chambers and replay the stop in her mind. Not because she wanted to relive the humiliation, she had no desire to dwell in it, but because it was a perfect, unfiltered glimpse into the reality so many Americans lived every day. For her, that night had ended with a gold badge and a career shift for the man who stopped her. For others, it ended in something far worse. She thought of Sandra Bland, Philando Castile, countless names that didn't make national headlines but still lived in the hearts of their families, their communities. The only thing unusual about her stop was that she survived it with the power to fight back. In law school, she'd been taught to think in terms of precedent. What cases had come before? What rulings had shaped the present? But life outside the courtroom had taught her that some precedents weren't written in books. They were written in biases passed down through generations, biases that decided who got the benefit of the doubt and who got the barrel of a gun. She knew people were watching that video who would still insist the stop was justified. People who would see her robe, her title, her Lexus, and still believe she must have done something to warrant suspicion. She couldn't change those minds, but she could reach the ones who were listening. In speeches after the incident, she often told the same story. Not to shame Officer Daniels, his name rarely crossed her lips, but to illuminate the pattern. She would stand before a room full of young lawyers, high school students, or church congregations and say, "The law is not just something you read, it's something you live. And if you live in this country while black, you live in a different version of it than some of your neighbors do. My story isn't rare. I'm just one of the few with the privilege and the platform to fight back." She connected it to the broader arc of American history, from Jim Crow to redlining, from stop and frisk to the routine traffic stops that weren't routine at all. She reminded people that progress wasn't a straight line. It was a constant push against forces that would prefer we forget. And in those moments, she wasn't just Judge Collins. She was the daughter of a man who marched on Auburn Avenue, the niece of a woman who taught children in underfunded schools, the product of a community that had built its own justice long before the official kind recognized them. The robe gave her authority, but the truth, that gave her power. She also understood something else. People needed stories like hers to remind them that bias could be challenged, that a single moment, caught on camera, could ripple out into policy changes, training reforms, and maybe even a few changed hearts. Picture it again. The flashing lights, the officer's hand wasting his gun, the accusations before the questions. Now picture the turn, the badge, the silence, the power shift so sharp you could feel it in the air. That's the moment that traveled far beyond a quiet Atlanta street. It sparked debates in living rooms, classrooms, and city council chambers. It forced a department to face uncomfortable truths. And it left one man without a badge, and another, younger, quieter, with a lesson he might carry for the rest of his career. But here's the real question. If she hadn't been a judge, if she hadn't had that badge to flash, how would that night have ended? And more importantly, how many other nights, for people without titles or cameras, still end the other way. What do you think? Is the problem a few bad apples, or is it something deeper, baked into the system itself? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because until we talk about it, until we name it, we'll keep reliving it.